Hello, welcome to the 30th edition of Drive Through Review. Today I'm going to talk about Ascension, Return of the Fallen. It's the first expansion for Ascension, which is a deck building game, in case you don't know. I'm not going to talk about the basics of how to play Ascension in this video. There's like 80 videos on it already if you go look at the videos for the base game. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the new cards and the expansion, as well as some of the new ways they give you to play with the game itself. Just a sort of a caveat, I am a play tester for Ascension, and I do like the game. So I did get a discount on a copy I got, but other than that, these are my honest thoughts. So let me just jump into some of the new cards, some of the new ways to play the game, and come back and share a little bit of my thoughts.
The first thing that you're going to notice is the card quality is vastly improved. The size of the cards is slightly different as far as the length and width of the cards, but the cards actually are much better quality. Now here you see I've got a collection of the common cards mixed together from both sets. Now I've heard that it's really hard to shuffle these, so I don't have that problem, even though I do play with them sleeved. Although the new cards do shuffle much better than the old cards. So, and that's how I usually shuffle. There's some other fancy ways to shuffle, but I use the sleeves that come with it, the Ascension sleeves, since I'm such a raving fanboy. But yeah, so it's great that they've improved the quality of the cards, I think. So people can look forward to that. The other thing to point out is that this is the original box. So you can see you got the new instruction booklet with the old one, and then the old board here. And this is all of the cards from the base game and the expansion. I've got the original Portal deck here, all the Mystics and new infantry in here. I'll explain a little bit more in detail what you get with the expansion. And then I've got 5 of the starting decks, and then here's the 6th one, which I'm just going to stick in there, just to show that there's no room for the 6th to kind of sit by itself, but you can stick it off the side here. And then here's the new expansion cards. If you see, I don't have any gems here, but you could sprinkle them in if you really wanted to in this middle section. It wouldn't be that big a deal, but it can all fit back in this main box, just not in the most organized way. However, I am a purchaser of these little deck boxes that they come with, and I've got 2 of these, so these work really well. So you don't really need to. I think you'll need 2 if you want to put all of the Mystics and infantry and stuff in one box, which isn't really required unless you're going to be playing with 6 players. I'll get more into that in a minute, but I've got 2 because I've got some other goodies in there too. So when you buy the expansion, it actually comes playable by itself with 2 players. You get 2 starting decks, of your Apprentice and Militia, so you've got enough for 2 players there. It gives you another Cultist card, and it gives you a stack of your Heavy Infantry and Mystics, which you then can add to the base game and actually play up to 6 players. The game plays really well with 2 players by itself, just the expansion. Another little goodie you get is if you pre-ordered, you get this little bad boy here. I'm not going to read his text, but it's just a fun little card. So like I said, you can play 2-player out of the box, combine it with the base game to play up to 6 players, and you can also actually play Solitaire. There's new rules for Solitaire, and it's actually quite fun. And I'll get a little bit into more of the different ways to play in a minute. I just want to show everybody these cards here. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I did want to highlight, I think the artist, who is the same artist as the first set, is really kind of coming into his own. Now, the first set got different levels of criticism for the art. I happened to be a fan of it. So this, you can see, is a battery monk. It looks really cool, and it may or may not come through on the camera here, but there's sort of a I don't really know the right words, but it's sort of an etched woodcut feel to all of these. So here's a cool little Mechanic card. I'm not going to get too much into what each of these cards does and whether it's good or bad or the valuation of the cards. I will highlight some of the new sort of keywords though. So there's Battery Monk, that's a nice one. Dimension Diver, that's a cool looking card, huh? Here's Reclamax. This is one of my favorite cards, art-wise and game-wise. This is a really outstanding, beautiful card. You can see here there's a fate aspect to some of these cards. And basically what happens is when this card appears in the center row, this effect here in the black is going to trigger. So in this case, each player may choose a construct in their discard pile and put it right in their hand. So that's pretty handy if you're playing Mechana or whatever, and you've got a construct that got blown up, or maybe you just bought it, and it can come right out. And then it's also got another play effect, so when you play it from your hand, it'll do that effect as well. Serpent Call, that's another Lifebound. I should say that the it seems like, I don't want to get in a, cause a huge discussion, but it seemed like Mechana was probably the strongest, and military, power-based decks were the strongest. The other factions here have seen a lot of love, especially Lifebound. So here's a Lifebound construct. Serpent Call looks really nice. This is Nairi, I guess, the Henge Queen, and you just play her and you gain 5 honor, and she's got funky hair. Here's the Dandelion Witch. Kids, look away. But you just draw a card, you gain 1 for each Lifebound. So a lot of good combos in that with that first set. Here's a Void card. Some more power, more defeating, more banishing. With those guys, here's a Black Hole. That's a cool looking card. I like that card. This is one of my favorite artistic cards, Lunar Stag. There's some cool looking ears there, or antlers, I guess. And so this is, you gain 2 runes or 2 honor. That's pretty handy. Here's a Black Watch Elite. Some more power, more banishing again. This is another nice looking card. This is a cool one. Name a card, reveal the top card of your deck, put it into your hand. If it is the named card, gain 3. So nice synergies with some other cards. Another Fate card. When this enters the center row, each player may banish a card in their hand or discard pile. That's always fun when that pops in the row. Here's that synergy I was talking about. Once per turn, when you acquire a hero, you may put it on top of your deck. It's also got a little fate aspect. Here's the Big Daddy, Adayu, the Chosen. Acquire or defeat any card in the center row, period. Pretty cool. Costs 8 though. Another Death Seeker guy. This is a neat little card. I'm not going to go through too much more of these. I like this card a lot. If you do not acquire or defeat a card during a turn, you may draw 2 additional cards at the end of your turn. Situational, but pretty cool. Alright, here's a good one. Arha Sensei, banish a card in your hand. If you do, acquire a Mystic or Heavy Infantry, add it to your hand. That is pretty killer at the beginning of the game, and it's a pretty cool looking card there. Alright, here's probably my favorite monster in the game, Ravenous Gorf. Pretty cool art. It's got a fate effect. When this enters the center row, banish all adjacent cards to it. So it's going to cause a huge hole and a quick, kind of resetting of the center row, so to speak. And then when you defeat it, you gain 3 honor, and you may banish a card that was adjacent to it. So, and it's a big old fatty. Look at him eating all the cards. And I'm not going to spoil everything, but here is Samuel, who is the bad guy from the first set. And in the first set, you had the Samuel's avatar, not actual Samuel. And he is unbanishable like the other one, which means you can't just straight up banish him. You have to defeat him. So he's going to sit there and clog that row up. Costs 8 power to defeat. When you beat him, you gain 8 honor, which is a ton. And then what you do is you'll put him face up in front of you like a construct. And so anytime you defeat a monster, then you actually add them to your deck. And then you can, when you come back and play them, let's say I defeated this sucker here, when he comes back in my hand, I can play him and gain that much power. So, at the end of the game, it's not going to be really that great because there's not many cards come out. But if you see this sucker come out first, and then everybody ramps up to beat him up, and then that guy's got a good military deck going for the rest of the game. So that's the cards. So you got the new fate effects, some other fun effects in there, some more love, so to speak, to the different factions. And the art is just it's just improving night and day. So Fire Tyrant, gain 6. Each opponent must discard a card. There's a couple more that are a little bit more directly interactive with the other players. I just want to talk a little bit about the Solitaire way of playing. So here I've set up this sort of sample center row. So the way Solitaire works is you'll take your turn as normal, acquiring and defeating any cards that might be in the center row there. And then you're basically playing against an artificial opponent. And the rules say that you're playing against Samael himself. So you're going to take your turn, acquire, defeat what you can. You can go ahead and buy mystics and infantry and stuff if you need to. And then Samael's turn is very simple. He's either going to acquire or defeat the right 2 cards in the center row. So these are going to disappear in this case because they're not monsters. So he's going to actually just acquire those cards and they'll go in his pile. And then you're just going to count them for the honor at the end of the game. He's never going to actually play any cards or do any effects. Now if they were monsters, let's say these 2 are monsters and it was Samael's turn, he's going to defeat them and then he's just going to get the honor reward on the card itself. So he's not actually going to do the extra effect or anything like that. So it's real simple, but it's pretty fun because you can kind of gear it and you know what to banish and you want to try to feed it so that he eats the lower honor cards and monsters. And it's actually pretty fun. And I was surprised when they introduced it to us, and it's actually really fun and it gives you kind of a good sense of the valuation of the cards and whatnot. So definitely give it a shot. Play it a couple of times. So I set up a little bit of a variant here that my group likes to play with when we play with both the expansion and the base set. So, and this kind of gets to one of the things I like about this game, which gives it a lot more replayability for my group, is it feels more like Magic than the other deck building games. And that's not because of any one particular mechanic, it's just kind of the feeling that we get. It feels a lot more like drafting Magic. The card effects seem to be more magic-y. I don't know. So normally when you play a game, you have your center row and your portal deck and you have your 6 cards in the middle, and they change throughout. Now with 2 players that seems to work pretty well. And we do shuffle both the expansion and the base set into one central portal deck and then go from there with 2 players. And even do it with 3 and 4. Have not played it with 6, but as anybody that knows, is you don't have any planning at all, because you got 6 cards, you got 6 players, so it's almost like the row is going to return to, it's going to be totally reset by the time it gets back to you, which is not so bad. It's kind of good and bad, but it definitely seems like the first player would have an advantage every time around. So what we like to do with 3 or more players is we take one center row with all the 6 original cards and then one center row with the expansion, 4 cards from the center row there. And it gives a little bit more availability of cards, a little bit more of an opportunity to go for some synergies, and you can kind of better expect those synergies to occur when it comes time to play your hand. And it's something that I would definitely try, and it's sort of fitting in line with how they're going to plan to release these sets. So the way they've talked about it is they're going to release them in blocks. So your base set's going to have 100 cards in it, and then you're going to have sort of a sub-expansion of 65 cards, or whatever it's going to be. And they're going to meant to be work together. So we're expecting the next expansion after this one to have 100 cards, and then the next expansion after that one to have 65 cards. So you can almost see that you can you could play however you want, and that's what we like about it, is you could build a giant stack of 1,000 cards and draft out of that all the expansions ever or whatever. Or you could have blocks together. So I could have this base set with this sub expansion set, and then the next base set with its expansion, or swap the base sets in with the expansion sets or whatever. And as soon as there's enough cards, the game is malleable enough. There's not like a strict 10 piles of cards, because that's the way it's balanced. This, you could kind of balance it around whatever kind of configuration you want, which is the cool part of Magic, really, is you've got like cube drafting, Westchester drafting, different whatever the different blocks that you use like the theme decks with and all that. So you could like theme deck these, you could have like a Lifebound deck or whatever, And as long as you kind of play test it a little bit and balance it, it has a nice versatility to it to make the game stay fresh. And the cards are, there's enough synergies with all the cards, and I think where they've done a really good job is actually the card powers themselves. They didn't get too out of hand. They're incremental enough without being boring, and there's some new changes here. So that's where I think this expansion really starts to expose what's underneath the covers here with Ascension.
All right, I hope you enjoyed the overview. Two things I didn't mention that I meant to mention during the overview was one, during the solitaire part of the game, when you acquire or defeat a card from the center row there, you don't immediately replace that card. All the cards slide to the right. So that's a key aspect that I just kind of glossed over. And it definitely is part of the strategy of playing solitaire. The second thing I missed was I didn't show any cards that allow you to acquire and defeat cards that have been placed in the void pile, the main discard pile. So there's a few cards there and some synergies with cards that allow you to go and retrieve cards out of either the void pile actually or your own discard pile. So there's some little fun tricks to be had there. I kind of said what my review there sort of at the end of the overview as far as why our group likes the game, and so that's pretty much the main reason is we feel like we have an engine here that we can mess with on our own without feeling like we're going and really uh, disturbing the game too much. Um, so yeah, so it's not coming across I like the game, but anyway, caveats aside, I think it's a fun game. The artwork's really improved. There's actually a nice lore here with this world, and if you spend a little time reading the flavor text, each of the factions has its own little history kind of vibe to them, and especially going with the effects, which is really fun. So anyway, thank you.